the hardest challenge, I think, for rest and recovery is you start to have to learn the difference between soreness, injury, and pain. And pain is different than injury, and people don't understand those two. Most people don't at all. And it's hard. You have to know, like, okay, am I going to get injured? And injured is like something that you would have to go and get a surgery done to correct. Pain is like muscle soreness, cramping, yeah, strains, little irritations, patella tendonitis, which a lot of people get, or shoulder tweaks because your supraspinatus is just inflamed and you get that nice little pain in the front of your shoulder that every CrossFitter gets. You have to figure out, is it just something that I can work through and rehab and strengthen and get better? Can I get more mobility to free some of that stuff up so I have less pain? Or is it something that's going to hurt me? And you have to kind of navigate that on your own because everybody's different.
Welcome to episode number 23. I am your host, Sebastian ENGSTROM, and today Coach Todd Wise Merissa Wise joined me. They own the CrossFit coaching online business called The Pack, which they operate out of New York. They have also previously owned CrossFit gyms in the Northern California area. We get into how to coach CrossFit athletes as they have several competing in the games, and Merissa is making her way over there. It's a fascinating conversation from training, nutrition, biohacking to habits, tips, and tricks. Enjoy. Merissa, Todd Wise, we are live. Amazing to freaking do this all together.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Good thing we have technology.
Yeah. I was going to say a few months ago, but it might have been longer. We were all at the same gym. The gym you used to own, maybe still part of, CrossFit Curahee. And
Yep.
Yeah. And there's some freaking phenomenal programming, coaching. I mean, what have you, Olympic weightlifting, CrossFit. It was spectacular. Something that as we did this breathing exercise that came up to me right now, what I'm doing with my program is incorporating mindset or mindfulness in the programming as well. And the first time I saw that integrated was actually your programming during COVID, when the gym was shut down. You started saying, "Hey, take some time to journal today." Is that how did that all come about? Let's just kick it off like that. How did you start thinking, all right, let's incorporate not just exercises, but let's go a step further?
I've actually done that for a long time. We didn't really do it for like general physical preparedness, so the general membership that would come into the gym a lot, just because we got pushback like early on when we did it. I used to do a lot of Wim Hof breathing for people and things post-exercise sometimes, and then just kind of talking about life. Sometimes I would talk before class about certain things going on in the world and like current events. But we tried to keep it to a minimum just because we know that everyone has difference of opinions and from different backgrounds of life. And we tried to be sensitive and accommodating to that. But I do think during COVID, it was something that needed to be done for a lot of people who struggled or were at home or didn't have a lot of connection or weren't able to go outside or were fearful to go outside during the height of COVID. So we just started adding that back in.
What was the feedback then?
People loved it. And I think more and more now in the fitness space, people are taking more time to breathe or get involved in a religious practice or a belief system and just kind of find what's going on inside of them. Because I think that is hugely important. And it's an addition to fitness. I think a lot of people talk about how fitness and mental health, they're not one and the same, but they do go hand in hand. And you do get a lot of good benefits post-exercise that make you feel happier, right? You get all the endorphins and all the good feelings when you're done with the workout. And I hope that people realize that like that's a stepping stone, that's a start where you could really use it as a launch pad to fix things in your life. But you do have to do some work, right? You have to journal, you have to do some mindset stuff, you have to do breathing, maybe see a counselor or go in for some therapy because we all need it, and work with a professional and work on yourself. And I think fitness brings that out to people. I I mean, there's one thing I don't like currently is when people say like exercise is their therapy.
Hmm.
I think it's true to an extent, right? Like I said, it's the starting place. But people need to go beyond that because you're almost like band-aiding something that might be clinically wrong with you. And I don't think fitness professionals can really help you with that to the extent that someone who has worked in psychology their whole life could help. So I think you do have to do both and work on it. So if fitness can get you to see the light a little bit, then that's great. And maybe we need to take a step further. So, I really enjoy it. I think it's something we can work on in little things, but by no means am I or anyone else like professional in that way, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I during COVID, I realized even deeper than before that fitness has been an addiction in my life. That it's been, like you said, I almost saw it as you can say that was my therapy, even though I love to go deep and I love to have, hence why I have a podcast. I love to have these type of reflective conversations and really analyze like, hey, how do you work? How do I work? What we do? Like, how does everything work? And I realized at that point that it was something, if I didn't have my muscles, I'd be incredibly insecure because that's how I found purpose when I was a young adult, I should say a teenager. I was insecure and I'm like, all right, how do I get girls' attention? All right, I start working out. I play basketball, right? And I'm like, all right, girls love guys with muscles. Let me start working out. And just started hitting random machines. That was my find an exercise machine and do as many reps as you can at a cool number, at a highest possible number. And there was one guy that now we're taking it back early days, one handball guy. He's pretty jacked. I don't know if he was on steroids or whatnot, but he was saying, hey, you need to start working out your legs too. I'm like, no, that's a bunch of BS. He's like, try to do squats. And of course I did stretch, but my Achilles tendons were so incredibly tight that I didn't do it. I didn't do a lot of leg exercises. His main advice, which I'm grateful for too, is as you reach any type of young adult, he said, hey, when you're hungover, that's when I would have the most beneficial games the day after you drink a lot, so during a hangover, because he would always get the munchies, right, and eat so much the night before. He'd had so much energy the day after, or at least have, and he wouldn't care because he was hung, right, exactly. And he wouldn't care because he would be so hungover, so the pressure was gone. He would just like, all right, let me just do whatever. Excuse me. So that was one of his early days advice that I followed, and that built an addiction, partly always almost to food to a degree too, because I'm like always wanted to get bigger, always wanted to gain on more muscle. And that was something that became very apparent during COVID. Like, right, who am I if I don't lift all these heavy weights? And that was a hard thing to tackle. And a lot of insecurity came up. So I started doing gymnastics and a lot of stretching. And that was a mental damn exercise in itself, and just realizing who am I becoming now that I'm starting getting smaller and smaller. Clothes are not fitting as good as they used to. So this is me going on quite a bit of a side note here, or maybe it's a response to it, but there's definitely a lot of therapy in exercise in itself, because I even find it to this day that, hey, you can work through some of the difficult emotions and even energies that are stuck in your body, but it can also be a crutch. That who are you if you take it away? Who are you if you get into a car crash? Who are you if you can't exercise? And if something does happen to you, that's a damn tough reality to face. So I'd rather face it on my own terms than on life's terms, right? So
that is really, really good. First of all, for people who haven't seen your Instagram, you are very good looking. You got a lot of good muscles. You got good genetics. I think it's interesting. So I definitely used to have a problem with exercise as well. And I think anyone who has been an elite athlete or just an athlete in college or high school or competitive in CrossFit or sport or weightlifting, you can go down the list. I think we all had an issue with our identity wrapped into those things. And for me, it's been in the last maybe 4 or 5 years that I've been able to get away from that. And even now when I'm coaching, because I've coached really high level athletes, and it's hard to separate your identity from being like, okay, I'm this really high level coach, when in actuality, or like I'm a CrossFitter, in actuality, you're not those things. You just do those things.
Right.
And that's something we talk to with a lot of people, because it is hard. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. With I'm a mom and I exercise, or I'm a dad and I exercise. And we start putting all these labels on what we are. And it's really tough, especially in the world, because you're always looking for your tribe. You're looking for the people that you can identify with and look to and feel familiar with and have things in common. And I think that's very valuable and important. But at the end of the day, I think people need to sometimes take a step back and be like, it's okay. Like, I'm a human being who just likes to do these things, and I'm a good person.
Sure.
And I think if we hear that more often, I think if you heard that when you were younger, trying to get shredded, if it was like, hey, you're a good dude, it's all right. I don't know. I wonder how far that would have went,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what comes up for me when you say that, it's the it's easy to go into bad and good, and anything you can say, the saying that your greatest hurt is your greatest superpower. So even though it's been a hurt of mine, it has taught me such an incredible amount about myself. So it's all been such an incredible teacher. So if I had everything, I mean, you can say that too. Usually the professionals who succeed in career path, you can say, the most are the people who have somewhat of a complex growing up. There's some type of difficulty that had to go through. If they had a very comfortable life with an incredible family, usually it's like, I don't really need to do much. Like, I'm just amazing the way I am, which is, I think, a way, we're talking big picture, healing many people, and where we don't have to feel like we need to achieve to prove something.
Right.
But I mean, there's two sides to the spectrum, but I'm grateful for the hurts and the pains too. I'm curious, Merissa, what's coming up for you when we're talking about this?
Yeah, I think Todd and I have definitely had a lot of conversations around this, just with my competitive goals and training. I think transitioning from collegiate sports was a little bit easier in that way of like managing that identity, because I did go from playing a collegiate sport to working in collegiate sports. So I did make the transition from athlete to coaching in a strength and conditioning setting, but I was just around it a lot and like the energy of it. So I think I was still like experiencing that. And then when I finished my interning, there was a gap period there between doing competitive CrossFit and competing. And I think I struggled in that period just because I didn't have something that was like, there wasn't like an end line or something that I was like working towards. And so I just kind of was in this like floundering period with like, I was doing fitness, but I was just doing it. Like, there wasn't any type of like specific goal. And I love training and I love fitness. So I showed up and trained every day, but there wasn't like that obsession can be a really strong like driver. Like, and for me, starting that journey to competing and wanting to go to the CrossFit Games, like, it's a lot easier to show up for the things that you might not want to do, or the things that are more challenging. And so it's been hard to strike that balance of like holding on to that identity and obsession, but also not so tightly that it's interfering with like my life and my well-being, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because I do think that you have to have a level of something like at the levels that we're talking about of like elite performers or CEOs, whatever it is, like there is a level of that you need to be successful. And you, I think, just need like a checks and balances, like whether that's the people around you or some sort of journaling or mindfulness like practice that you're in, where you can kind of scan yourself and scan your mind of like, okay, are there red flags? Are there things coming up in my thought patterns that are dangerous and that are going to be destructive for my goal? So I think that's kind of where I fall on that, and that's kind of what's coming up. It'll be interesting to see my transition from competitive CrossFit into working in the business more. That'll be in the next year or so. So for now, I'm kind of in the thick of it and eyes on the prize. And yeah, I guess we'll tackle that bridge when it comes.
Yeah. What are your current goals in CrossFit?
Current goal is, it's to go to the CrossFit Games on a team. So I've been doing some team interviewing, I suppose, the last month or so. So excited for that. With the rules with CrossFit, I'm likely going to have to do a relocation in January. It looks like towards the city, like New York City area. So we'll be doing that for the 2022 season and training. So.
Okay. How about you, Todd?
I just exercise, but I recently got our blood work done. We're going to do a podcast on that. And I don't know, my aesthetics were not where they used to be like in 2015. So I started just sharpening up my diet and then doing a little bit more training volume. I am 35 now, so I have a lot of masters athletes. So I coach 10 high-level competitive athletes that are masters, 2 of which who went to the games this last year, and then 2 that got very close. 1 that was 3 spots out from qualifying. So my goal is to try and get 5 of those guys to the CrossFit Games this coming year, and then so the 2 repeats and then 3 new ones. I want to do the Masters Online qualifier, or at least qualify in my age group. I probably won't be able to do it because I'll be coaching those Masters through it to qualify for the games. So a little more training volume, but it's interesting how like I don't spend any more time training than I was before as far as like health. It's just I do more because I'm a little more organized and I have like a specific idea of a goal, and I get more done in the 90 minutes, and I'm like moving faster and I have a reason. So when the workouts start to hurt, as we know in CrossFit, I have something to be like, all right, I'm going to keep going, I guess. Whereas in the past, I'd be like, I'll ease back a little bit. It's okay.
So with bringing it back with the mindfulness and the mindset there, how we touched upon it, both sides, how do you incorporate it? I mean, more so for you, Todd, with the coaching and the masters, and even in your day-to-day lives right now as athletes and coaches too. And what do you see it going?
You want to go first?
Well, you probably have more to say with your people, but
honestly, I think the biggest thing with mindset for just coaching and understanding CrossFit or any competitive endeavor in any sport really is that the one thing I try to tackle with people is that it's not one reason. Everyone always tries to find like, okay, this is the reason why I'm not getting results. It's like, it's the one thing in the program, or it's this program, or it's this nutrition style, or it's this reason. And I think people don't realize how it's like a multifaceted reason. And they focus in and try to find the one thing, the one secret thing that's going to fix everything or change it so greatly. And it's like, no, it's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that. And you got to really work on understanding the complexity of the picture. So I work on that with athletes a lot. And even with myself, I like try to not get in the trap because I don't know, I'm trying to think of like an easy example, but
you could use my back, I guess.
Okay.
That's an easy one.
Marissa hurt her back right after the CrossFit Games. And we had to like deload some of the squatting and stuff, but she would be like, it's this thing. Like I kept
saying like, oh, it must have been the traveler because I didn't train, or it must I just kept coming up with all these things of like, it had to be this, like to isolate, like,
and she's like going through the list. And I was like, look, first of all, everyone's back is going to get hurt at some point in their life, whether they're competitive or not. And there's millions of reasons why. Like you could have slept funny. You get to sit down too long. Your back could be tight. If you're a female, your period could be really bad, and you could have tried to lift heavy and you hurt it. So like it could be all of those things in one thing. And for her, it was, we went to the CrossFit Games and we drove out there 12 hours. She coached with me at the CrossFit Games the whole week with the 2 masters athletes we had. She didn't exercise or move around the way she normally does. Then we drove back another 12 hours. And then she went and tried to do a heavy squats the following day.
I think I PR'd my 800 and then I had squatting or something.
Yeah. And so it's like that, it was all of that, the cascading effect that's impacting you and changing that. So, and that's one example, but it's like, that's kind of life. Like there are a cascade of things, a multitude of things that are impacting you on a daily basis, and they're inputs. And you have to deal with all these inputs, and you have to acknowledge what they are. And there's so many of them. I think sometimes that's challenging for people, or a big task, but the better you can get at that and the more resilient you can get to that, you can find a better answer. Or even if you don't find an answer, you can be really content with what's happening and be like, okay, there's all of these things happening. Some of them I can control, some of them I can't. And this is how I'm going to move forward. And you can create really good, solid action plans to help yourself continue and take the next step forward in whatever it is that you're doing. So that's kind of the mindset stuff that I work on a lot with athletes, and it bleeds into a lot of other stuff. And there's other things, but I think that's the biggest thing I try to get them to realize first.
During a competition, have you found that, hey, there's an edge? Like when you hit that wall, you're like, shit, like my body hurts. I don't know how to keep going. I know this is going to be individual. Have you found some type of tip or trick? Maybe you don't want to share it, but how do you get past that point? Do you have any secrets?
I would love to share it. So what we found and we're working on is so in CrossFit, there's a lot of people that are like, I'm going to run my own race. You hear that a lot if you're in CrossFit. But if you look at other sports, people don't really say that in other sports as much. But it seems to be this really big thing in CrossFit, and I don't know why. So I've started to get people to shift in competition. So in competition, I want athletes to care about their outcome, not as it defines them, but as it's what they want. So you want to get first. And I want you to want first. And I want you to say, I want to get first, even if you're going to get last place. Like you're going to go out there and you're like, I'm here to get first place. And when I tell athletes this, it's a hard thing to accept, because you can hide behind saying like, well, I did my best and I went out there and I stayed to my plan, and you feel good about that. Well, that's probably going to happen anyways. Like you're going to go out there and you know what you can do, you know who you are, you have a plan, you're going to do it. But there are moments in workouts where you could race somebody. It's not going to push you that far out of your comfort zone to do. But if you're not out there saying, I want to get first, or I want to beat that person next to me, you're not going to actually like get it, because you're going to sit back and self-limit and just run your race when there could have been an opportunity that you could go after it. And when you're in a competition, like you have nothing to lose really, because someone's going to get first and someone's going to get last. And so wouldn't you rather try to get first? And even if you explode and you can't, you just die in the workout and everything goes terribly, at least you went for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd rather have athletes do that and try and like have a good game plan. But if there's an opportunity, push a little harder and try to get first, Recently, there's something that CJ and I talked about on another episode of the podcast, but also something I've gotten her to do is like go out and compete. And in CrossFit, people don't talk about that very much. There are some athletes who do that, but I think everyone can do it. It's just really challenging. And it's not really a secret, but I know how hard it is to get people to do it. So I know that like, even though we talked about it, they may not figure it out, and it'll take some time. But I think everyone should walk out on the floor and say, I want to get first, and just put it all on the line. And whether you get first or last doesn't matter. Like the effort of you wanting to get first was enough.
What comes to me when you say that is kind of dumb. Get out of your mind, do whatever, just to like become as present as possible in your body. Even I get into like, hey, for me, a song comes on, like you just get into the flow and you see athletes start dancing and just feeling it. And then, hey, it's just me and whoever is in front of me, and I'm doing it and I'm feeling it. And instead of being up here, you're getting into your heart and in your body, and you're just, hey, I'm doing this damn thing and I'm gonna get after it. And I can see, hey, like, and all of a sudden when you do that and you stop, I know that's my biggest setback is stop caring about what the people around me are doing. Stop comparing, okay, if I go faster like this, I'll beat this person. But hey, what can I do in this movement right now to make it more effective or faster? Or just, I mean, that, for sure. I mean, I'm getting fired up now. I mean, I want to compete now. I'm at a different state in my life. I feel like after having kids, it's even more, you can see a softening approach, and having a daughter especially. I've had my ego checked significantly, and it's not about always what I can achieve, but it's about my presence of being there. And funny enough, when I'm more present and when I'm just very fully involved in what I do, the results come, which is a magical thing. But it's not the linear kind of thinking like, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, you put all your effort forward. If you just like do it as hard as you can, you'll get better. And it's not always the case, which is an interesting thing. And maybe that leads into the next topic too. Like how do you find that balance as athletes and as coaches too? Like how do you treat rest versus getting after it and going hard? And even like approach to your training.
I guess I can go on that one for a second, then you can
go for it.
Well, Todd does my one-on-one program design. And I think when I hear that question, I almost don't have to do a lot of it. Like a lot of that, like when to go and when not to go, is kind of built into the program. And so, like, I know CJ said this to Todd before, one of Todd's athletes, that like, oh, like just when I feel like I'm like, oh man, I need a break, like there's a break in there, like like some sort of like deload or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so I think when you're working with a coach that is working with you in a one-on-one capacity, like they're in tune with like the metrics that are coming in. And if they see a score and they're like, oh, it's kind of off, like that seemed a little slower, or they didn't go as heavy as I thought, or whatever, like they're going to start to pick up on some of those things that might be accumulating in your training, and they're going to like pivot and make adjustments. I mean, I do have set rest days on Thursdays and Sundays where I do like active quote recovery, I guess, but it's just zone 2, like blood flow work, stretching. But the rest of the days, like I'm not really making too many decisions as far as like if I want to do more stuff. Like I'm not just adding things to the program. Like what I need is in the program design already. And so I don't need to be like searching for things to add on or take things off. And so that's something that when you are working with a one-on-one coach, a lot of times that's built in, which is really cool. And I think even the buzzword that gets thrown around is like the intended stimulus of workouts. And that again is another thing that when my metabolic conditioning comes up, or I have like CrossFit in my program, the appropriate intensity is drawn out due to the structure of the workout. So whether it's an interval or it's an EMOM, like the way that it's written pulls out the appropriate intensity in me, to the point that I'm not going quote hard every day where I'm just like, I don't know if I can show up for another day of this. Like not every day is that way. And I think that when you get to a spot that is the case, or you're going to a gym that has program design that is that way, like you're going to have to figure out a way to temper your own effort so that you're not doing that every day. Like if the program is, if you show up to a gym Monday through Friday and you're doing an AMRAP every day, you're going to have to pick that longer AMRAP day and just be like, all right, I'm going to pull back today because I need to, or choose to just take a rest day if your gym is that way. But for somebody who's like me who's doing one-on-one program design, a lot of that should be built in to what you're doing. I don't know if I spoke to that well, Todd. You have to.
No, it was good. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, people who are listening to us who don't have a one-on-one coach, it's going to be a bigger challenge, because if you are engaging in CrossFit at a CrossFit gym, it's great. It's functional movement executed at relative intensity or high intensity, depending on who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the nature of the beast. So you're going to do couplets, triplets. You're going to go long, short, and heavy, and that's the method. The coaches there need to really help you understand fatigue, whether that's physical fatigue or mental fatigue, and just how to approach those things. But for like rest and recovery, honestly, I think most people could go 2 weeks pretty hard, and then you're going to need like a deload week. And then you can build that out longer. More elite athletes can go a little bit longer, anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, and then need a deload. And you can really reach out. With like general physical preparedness, this GPP, or like health and longevity, you definitely want to understand like yourself, but you do need to push hard. So that's where the challenge is. And if you go to a good gym, hopefully the coaches can help you with that, because the good stuff happens when you have intensity, right? You want to push your heart rate up, most people above 150, and hold that heart rate for a good amount of time, anywhere from 12 to 24 minutes. That's going to give you a physiological response, just heart rate alone. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. Hopefully you're doing multi-joint compound movements, right? And you're squatting, unlike how you were for a long time, not squatting. But you want to do that, and that's going to get you the biggest bang for your buck if you're looking for fitness. But you have to be aware of like what that's doing to your body. And that's the hardest challenge, I think, for rest and recovery, is you start to have to learn the difference between soreness, injury, and pain. And pain is different than injury, and people don't understand those two. Most people don't at all, and even elite athletes. And it's hard. You have to know, like, okay, am I going to get injured? And injured is like something that you would have to go and get a surgery done to correct. Pain is like muscle soreness, cramping, strains, little irritations, patella tendonitis, which a lot of people get, or shoulder tweaks, because your supraspinatus is just inflamed and you get that nice little pain in the front of your shoulder that every CrossFitter gets. And you have to figure out, is it just something that I can work through and rehab and strengthen and get better? Can I get more mobility to free some of that stuff up so I have less pain? Or is it something that's going to hurt me? And you have to kind of navigate that on your own, because everybody's different, right? The pains I feel in my body are similar, but my threshold for pain might be higher or lower than yours. And you just have to figure that stuff out, which is a challenge in it itself. So as far as rest and recovery, it's person dependent, and you want to talk to your coach realistically.
I do think for a majority of people, though, that doing, because I have clients that will say that they don't have, or like they don't take a rest day. And I think if you're engaging in something that's more like Orange Theory, or not as much load involved, I think you could tolerate doing that 5 to 6 days a week and maybe only having 1 day off. But I think those who are doing CrossFit following the traditional 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 day on, 1 day off is good for your health.
Yeah, it's still hard. I don't know how familiar you are with Garmin. So Garmin does a pretty good job showing people balanced training effects, and they have 3. So you want to have high intensity training, you want to have a moderate train, and then like a long, slow aerobic training. And they give you like these little bars on the watch and showing you throughout the month if you filled those bars up.
Yeah, I think it's high aerobic, low aerobic, and anaerobic.
Okay.
Is the 3 bars, yeah.
So like anaerobic, high intensity. Low aerobic is long, slow for people 120 to about 140 beats a minute. You're doing more cyclical work like biking, rowing, swimming, running. And then the mid-range aerobic stuff I would classify as like a CrossFit Metcon that's like 12 to 20 minutes long. And you can fill those bars up and it'll show if you're balanced in your training. That's a really cool tool if you have a Garmin, and not a lot of people have one, but the idea behind that is a good coach kind of can look at the program design or look at what you're doing and come to that realization without the Garmin, and just look at your total volume, your time duration, your intensity and your effort, and say like, okay, you might need to do some longer, low impact aerobic work to balance out all this high intensity stuff, and pull out like a high intensity day, or pull out a sprint anaerobic day, and make the training a little more balanced. That will help with recovery as well. So hopefully I answered your question, but it's not easy.
Yeah, and I think it's even more interesting now going into, because we're talking about quite a few different topics. Actually, let me ask you one before we go into, because I'd love to hear about your day and how you structure yourself from the aspect of, so I think let's hit nutrition, and then we hit sleep, and then we can go into, and I'll hit on these points myself and what I do myself too. So let's talk nutrition. Like, how do you and what do you coach when it comes to nutrition and peak performance?
So the PAC training and nutrition, the nutrition side of that coaches macro-based nutrition. So tracking and monitoring protein, carb, and fat intake per day. So that's something that Todd and I both adhere to as well. So it's relatively straightforward because you basically play Tetris on a nutrition app so that when your day ends, you've got enough proteins, carbs, and fats to support lean body tissue and not fat. So you can adjust those macros based on whether you need a deficit or a surplus. Most of my athletes, competitive athletes, are in a slight surplus for training. Make sure they've got adequate fuel for that. And then I have some general clients that if they're looking for weight loss are in a deficit. So for us on a daily basis, we keep it really simple as far as like meals go, if you want those types of specifics.
Sure.
But we do just like a 3 carb, 3 protein, and 3+ veggies. So I just keep all of those things cooked in the fridge in like larger Tupperwares. So it'll be like venison, turkey, chicken, rice, potatoes, usually oats is our third one. We don't really pre-prep that one. And then just anything that's seasonal. And so as far as veggies, and then each meal, it's just portion out the amount of those things that we need, and you add the condiments as sauces as needed. And that's pretty much it. Like, you don't really do any eating out for the most part. On the weekends, you'll see a pizza pop up on occasion, probably like once a month. I don't know, more than that, probably once a month.
Yeah, I'm a little worse than you. You're definitely.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, Todd finds some other things to eat. But for me, that's what that looks like. And when we do have those types of things, usually it's on a weekend day. And yeah, I guess that's, you can give your nuggets on what you do.
Well, for context, it's pretty easy for us because she has allergies, low-grade allergies, and she'll get inflammation and upset stomach and things of that nature. So we do try to keep the foods pretty regular and clean.
The gluten and dairy are the ones that are pretty much not in the house.
So you can see how like that eliminates a lot of food pretty easily. And then for me, like I'm living like a normal life, so I won't say no to certain things. Like if we go somewhere, like a party or an outing or something, I won't say no to pizza, cakes, ice cream, stuff like that. She will because of the allergies. But I think if she wasn't competing in CrossFit and didn't have the allergies, it'd be a little more, it'd be easy. I think people look at what we do and they're like, how could you do that? Well, the first thing is like, I don't mind eating the same thing every day. Some people do, and they'll get like palate fatigue, but you can kind of get over that pretty quick. If you realize that like food is just fuel, and there's certain things that you can make that taste really good. Like I really enjoy oatmeal with frozen berries in it.
Sure.
I think that's like the best thing in the world. And so I really enjoy it. And every morning that I have it, I'm like taking the time to be like, I really enjoy oatmeal with berries, and just like have some gratitude for that. Cause they're also, I mean, think about this. We live in America. There are some people who don't have the opportunity to have oatmeal with berries. And
every morning.
I will think about that sometimes, and that kind of adds more value to what I'm eating. And so we just do that. But with technology and everything else, and just the way the world is now, so the food industry is really against all of us. And I think people don't know that as much as they should. So like corn is subsidized by the U.S. government in our nation. And if you're a farmer and you make corn, they're going to turn it into high fructose corn syrup, and they're going to make it really inexpensive to sell that. That's why you can go to Costco and buy a huge bag of like gummies for like $3, but you buy one avocado and it's $3. Because the government's not subsidizing the avocados. Sure. They might want to try to, but that's just not how it is. Large companies like Coca-Cola, Nestle, those types of things, they just have their hands in everything. And that's okay. They make great products if you eat them in moderation, but they're definitely out there just hammering against you. And that's something that's pretty new. Since like the 1970s really is when it like really started. You know, if you look back in the 1940s, 1950s, there wasn't really anything that had a whole lot of shelf life. You know, they had canned food and boxed food, but if you talk to your grandmother or grandfather, you could ask them some questions about the types of food they had on hand, and it's very different. So when you look back, there wasn't a whole lot of obesity during that time, and there are a lot of people coming out now and blowing the whistle on why there's obesity. You know, there's too many seed oils, too much high fructose corn syrup in these things. And so we're lucky that we have technology, and we're lucky that we live in America. So you can kind of take control of that if you're willing to understand that, like, yeah, Starbucks is going to make a really good pastry that you're going to get addicted to and you want to eat every day because they want to get your dollars. Like they want your $4.95. And that's okay. I'm not saying don't eat that. But if you do, like, learn to enjoy it, understand the bigger picture, understand where that money is going, who that's benefiting, and the problem it's creating. And then the rest of your day, like, eat real whole food. You know, there's nothing wrong with meat and vegetables, or if you don't like meat for various reasons, just a whole lot of vegetables and fruit. Like, you can get by on a lot of that. And I wish people would understand that more. But you also have to understand it's everywhere, right? Food is everywhere. You go to the office, people bring food. You go to school, there's food. You go hang out with friends, there's food. We're very communal around food. So you have to take control of that as well. And people don't want to. They don't want to take self-responsibility around what they're eating. And that's hard. I understand that. But, like, if you don't, you're going to create severe metabolic syndromes. And then you're going to have a heart attack, and you're not going to live as long as you want to live. You're not going to see your children have their children or get married or huge life events because you decided that you wanted to eat Starbucks muffins every day. You know, like
a lot of that, like, responsibility or taking on that self-responsibility is around education, right? Like, the missing piece for most people and their nutrition, like, you don't have to track. I mean, eventually you would want to track macros because that is what gives you education, but just learning that, like, I have new clients that don't know that chicken is mostly protein, or that, like, pork shoulder is equal fat and protein. Like, there's just, like, so many things and it's like, if you don't know that about those types of foods, like, you certainly aren't going to know that about purchased foods that are packaged and things that you're getting out to eat if you don't even know that about, like, non-processed foods. So that's kind of where we fall on the world of food and the food industry outside of our own nutrition. But yeah, I'd love to hear about what you do with your nutrition too.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with so he came second in the Open in Sweden, and he was saying, I didn't used to care about really what I eat. I don't really care now either. And I asked him the question about, so what about the protein? He was like, yeah, well, usually I say I don't care what type of protein. My body does well of whatever. So his wife had a higher quality protein. So he tried it, and I'm like, hey, I feel a whole lot better. And the thing is, he never realized that he just felt off and kind of like shit all the time. And that's the biggest reason for me too. Like, when I started having my realizations, like, all right, just having a cold like once a month, that's just an ordinary life. Having mucus on a regular, that's just a regular life. Like being irritated in the afternoon or after I eat is okay, or being bloated, that's okay. That's just, everybody deals with it. And eventually I started realizing, okay, I'm starting to get, because I was prolonging this stuff, and there's if we go deeper, there's like this mind brain gut connection too. Like your gut is your second brain, and there's so many neurons and so many connections between the two, and even how you feel emotionally can affect on how you digest foods, and there's a whole study on that in itself. But to go up a little higher level or surface level, I started realizing after getting more like it got so severe from stress and from part anxiety, but I started eating. I was a personal trainer and a strength coach at this point. I was 22, 23. I ate pretty clean, but I started like, all right, I'm going to have these pre-made, what were they? Breakfast burritos, I think. They heat up in a microwave.
Yeah, delicious. Right.
Yeah, something like that. Or like there were this egg, it was not the Egg McMuffin, but it was something, it was
Jimmy Dean.
Some sort of microwavable
breakfast. Yes, exactly. And then I started having, and now we're going a little graphic, but blood in my stools. I'm like, what the hell is happening? And I started realizing, all right, I'm getting IBS symptoms. So, and that's irritable bowel syndromes. Like I'm having some major gut issues, and I was getting to the bottom of it. Is gluten was the biggest thing. Gluten and then dairy, and two things, if you're not familiar with it, like how you can see from a lot of people, is usual digestive distress. So we're talking about bloating, we're talking about slowness, we're talking about like brain fog, not just feeling irritated overall, slowness, not wanting to get up in the morning, and dairy was a big thing for me. Like I got zits from it, I got acne, and that started disappearing when I started removing that. Even my mucus started going down, and now it's been this long journey of removing it slowly and surely, and then removing all the oils that are highly refined or highly processed, like canola oil and whatnot, and then going paleo, then going a step further, going AIP, so anti-inflammatory protocols, so removing anything from legumes to the paleo is no nightshades, tomatoes, eggplants. There are quite a few other things, but no bread, no grains. But I do have incorporated, again, went on the bulletproof diet quite some time. So white rice is okay there. But I realized I overdid it on that because I ate white rice. And I even did it for breakfast too. So I started just getting major inflammation on that end too. So it's kind of that, is pick your poison. The more I'm refining, the more sensitive I'm getting towards everything else. Like there is the body starts adapting to like, oh, this protein is similar to this other protein, and I had no clue. Like let's say the lectin in a tomato is similar to, or the protein that is the lectin is similar to the potato, and I wasn't sensitive to potatoes now, but because I'm more dialed in and removing other foods, now that I have a potato, I'm more sensitive. That I'm like, so my list of foods that I'm eating is going down and down and down. So, and now it's an in between carnivore and AIP. So no oxalates in my food, because we did a full house of testing. Oxalates being a substance in your food that you can find in a lot of leafy greens, especially being in a lot of vegetables, and that inhibits the uptake of vitamin C among other nutrients that you don't want to just pee or poop out. And that was something that quite a few, and my daughter and I specifically had, and one of the precursors to that were our environmental toxins. Hence one of the reasons why we were like, all right, let's move to Sweden too and see how we do there. And we only bought and still buy all organic grass-fed meat, pasture-raised chickens, and so forth. So a big realizations with doing everything from Dutch test to so everything from your hormones to blood work to stool, different stool type of work, all across the board. So we worked with Chris Kresser and did a full rather expensive 1-year treatment, and it didn't get much better, but we found out a whole lot of things. And the biggest thing was the oxalates and environmental toxins, and even filtrating your food, your water to the utmost degree. And I thought in California would be good, but it's so much. Even though it has the best produce out there, taste wise and looks wise, it's this cross pollination. You have the winds, and if something is GMO, if something has pesticides, if the wind takes it and goes off to the next farm that is organic, it's cross-pollinated, and you can't really keep track of what is what and what is not. And that is a big thing, and even that leaches into the groundwater and eventually leaches into the water that we drink, and the water that, and all the food that is consumed, like the cows eat it. And that is, now we're going into the whole circle with the corn. We could go we could go into this for quite some time, but my short of this, I'm doing intermittent fasting. I used to do bulletproof coffee, don't do that anymore. Eat let's say big meal of, let's say today I eat brown rice still, I eat white rice still. So today was brown rice pasta, butternut squash. It was lamb meatballs with dill and some with raisins, and there was zucchini in the oven. So that's a repeat on that. A lot of meat, a lot of chicken, a lot of wild caught fish, no eggs, which is unfortunate. Love eggs. But that's now I'm full. Yeah, right.
I'm full. Leucine. How are you gonna get jacked?
I have a no egg client also. It's a bummer.
You need that raw eggs. Huge muscles.
Yeah, have you done any organ meats at all?
Yes, with I shouldn't say proud reluctancy, but yes, that has been on the list. Like, yes, it's just about finding a palate and a taste for cooking those.
Yeah.
So we're in the same boat. We have some. Well, what?
I mean, I like liver.
I haven't had it before, but I have it thawed. Literally, I thawed it out this weekend, and my friend locally.
She's gonna try it.
Yeah, my friend locally, her mom loves it. And so she sent me her like go-to recipe, which is really pretty straightforward. It's like bacon and onions, pull the bacon out, cook the liver in the bacon fat.
Nice. Yep.
And then you add it all back in together.
There we go. Max the flavor.
We'll see how it goes. Yeah. So, I mean, at least we can start there, and then down the road, if we can take the bacon part out.
I could do it with like salt and lime. So like living in California my whole life, even though, things are the way that they are that you just described, and it's 100% true. You're like microdosing every day, supplementing stuff in your body that you don't even know about. But the culture in California, there's a lot of like Aztec, Mexican, Indian culture. So there's a lot of really good food. Like if you go to some of the markets, like the Mexican markets in like downtown San Jose area, or like Sunnyvale, because you can get like cow's tongue and like liver and like all kinds of cool stuff that some people don't like. And I used to work at this online company, and we would go every Friday, and we would just get the meat and grill it up. And then we had this guy who knew how to make it all, and it'd be like lime and salt and cilantro, and
nice. I
really enjoy it, but it's an acquired taste, I think.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, now you're saying a few things that I can, yes, it's about, we just connected with a local farmer here, so we'll see if we can get some of that. But there are a few things I'm curious about too. Have you tried like eyeball or let's see, brain?
I've done brain.
Tripe? Yeah.
Not eyeball.
No?
I've had very minimal exposure to the other.
So like, heart,
parts, I guess.
Heart, liver, tongue, brain.
Yeah, I've only dissected those things in anatomy and physiology.
Yeah.
But those, I guess.
I'm not into it. I just feel like I have never been I literally think about, like when he asked that question, I'm like thinking about my life. I'm like, I literally have never had anyone offer me those things to even try. Mm-hmm. So my exposure is just low.
Started as a kid when I had duck, all right, new things.
I mean, I like duck. That's a pretty normal one, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, that's really cool.
I think this is, now I see it as a challenge. Sometimes it's just amazing to talk about these things, because I mean, I feel like I'm calling myself out on this like BS, like, hey, I'm preaching this, but I'm not even eating some of the most nutrient dense things that that it would be very beneficial.
We know a couple of people that are going down the carnivore path, and they're also having trouble with like mustering up the ability to eat some of those other nutrient dense options. And I know they capsulate it for people too, but it's just not going to be the same, nutritional experience. So
there are easy ways to start too. Chicken hearts and chicken livers. I don't know if you've tried that.
Turkey hearts and livers actually a little more tasty.
Oh, okay, that's a good recommendation.
Put that into. They're a little like, because I like gamey meats.
Yeah,
and they're a little gamier than the chicken liver and hearts. So,
tying it back to athletes and the ones you coach, what are you seeing? Are you seeing? I mean, paleo is often associated with the CrossFit, but when you actually speak to a lot of these top athletes, they don't care. They don't do, or do you see any type of fasting? Like the guy I was talking to yesterday, he even does to a degree intermittent fasting. Like how prevalent do you see that, or even some of these more specific diets like ARP or even carnivore? Do you see that pop up?
Well, most people, if you don't eat past like 8 p.m. and then you don't eat again until 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
You're fasting for 12 hours. So you do get the benefits of a fast. Not as much as if like you're doing the smaller window where it's like 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. But you're still getting some of those fasted benefits. So most of these athletes do that. But they're trying to build as much muscle as possible. So it may not be the best thing for them. There's someone like Rich Froning does the fasting. But he's an anomaly in the sport and his genetics for sure.
He's also doing like a conditioning piece fasted. And then the thing with that is that you've got to be really dialed in with what you're eating after.
Yeah.
If you're doing any type of training fasted, your post-training nutrition importance increases astronomically because you already did the session without the fuel that you would have for a different piece. So like, I know that the athletes who do things like that are typically pretty dialed in with what they're having after that session to make sure that they're getting like appropriate recovery.
So the fear there is that you want muscle sparing. So it's good. I think people could do fasted work and stuff, but it will catabolize the muscle, and you don't know 100% because you're not doing any like muscle biopsies to this human being before they go and train, and then they train, and then you're taking a muscle biopsy and seeing how their lack of fueling is damaging the muscle. Yeah, you have like no idea. So we're just going off of the research that's out there, and that might change, as the years go on and technology gets better. But as it stands right now, like you could be doing more harm than good, depending on your goals. And if you're an elite athlete, you might be tearing down muscle that you're trying to build up. And if, in CrossFit, it's a strength sport that is heavily endurance based, which is unique than other endurance sports. Like male athletes have to be able to play the game at a high level, clean and jerk 350 pounds and snatch 285 pounds to be at the top level. But then you also have to be able to run a marathon in like 3 hours, which is challenging. Anyone who's recreationally ran a marathon, 3 hours is fast. When you can also snatch and clean and jerk that amount of weight.
Sorry for interrupting. Would you say actually that is a realistic like benchmark that you should have as a top level athlete, that you should be able to run in a marathon?
Yeah. I think you should be able to run it. I don't think a 3 hour is what's happening.
For males, yeah. For females, like 4 hour.
I bet the men would be like a 3:30 and then a 4.
Probably. But, probably.
But I think completing one for
Cutting
sure.
hairs right there with the 30 minutes.
But yeah, I think completing one is definitely. I mean, there's people. I was telling Todd the other day. I mean, there are athletes that they're doing like 8 mile zone 2 work on a rest day, and it's like, all right, it's just a matter of if they have enough footfalls to do the marathon, but they definitely have the energy system training to complete it.
Right. Yeah.
It's just whether or not they can tolerate the volume.
So for example, 2018, they had them do a marathon row on a Concept 2 rower,
Mm-hmm.
an indoor erg. And those times were off elite indoor rowing times by 10 minutes. And it was
no
like,
way.
10 minutes is a long time in that event, realistically.
The woman who won at the CrossFit Games she broke, I think she either held the record that season.
Yeah.
Like she actually won
Margot Alvarez.
For rowing.
Yeah. So you can look it up for that year for indoor rowing competition. But then everyone else fell in different spots. So these athletes they're up there. And I think a lot of people don't realize how close they are to the elite level times. But the thing is, they don't have enough consistency and resilience to, they'd have to fully switch over and stop doing some of the other stuff, right? Because being able to lift heavy weights takes away from your endurance and vice versa. So they're a jack of all trades, a master at none. But it's really impressive when you start running the numbers. People will talk about like their weightlifting, like 300-pound snatch, depending on how heavy they are as a male athlete. That's a pretty good number. Now, if you're in a different weight class, that could be a terrible number. Mm-hmm. So it all depends on a lot of different factors. If you know about the sport of weightlifting versus the sport of CrossFit, where there's no weight classes, so it's playing that game. Because like Wes Kitts would be in like the 210 plus pound weight class, and he snatches almost 400. Someone like Patrick Vellner snatches 300, and he would be in the same weight class. So in that example, not a great weightlifter. Cody Anderson, on the other hand, is about 160 pounds, and he can snatch almost 300 in his weight class. And he gets also coached by Amy Everett, and he's been to nationals and also at the CrossFit Games. So there's that carryover. Same thing with Tia, who is now going to compete in bobsled in the Olympics for Australia. She's also competed in the Olympics for Australia in weightlifting and has won the CrossFit Games for the last 5 years in a row. So these people are good. And when you talk about nutrition and what they need to focus on, I think the best place, because the sport is more enduring than it is a strength sport, you want to look at what runners do, what cyclists do for nutrition, and the top ones. And a lot of it is carbohydrates. I think a lot of athletes in the sport, and even like these like B or C level athletes trying to break through to the top level, do not eat enough carbohydrates around their workouts for their training for whatever reason. And then some eat too much and it's at the wrong time. And that, I think, is the biggest key that they could work on in the sport.
What's the timing?
And then quality of food is good.
Sure.
Yeah, so going into events, you want to have a good amount of carbs. So let's say you're going to the CrossFit Games. You want to start carbing up 3 days out and incrementally increase. And you could have, was it 5 times?
I think it's like 0.5 to 0.7 grams per pound of body weight, I believe, is what trainer wrote, guys.
So let's say you're a 200-pound male, you're going to end up at 600 to 800 grams of carbs leading into that competition.
When it's usually at how much?
3 to 400.
Yeah.
So almost double.
Yeah, you're probably doing that off like a 200-pound person, Matt.
Yeah. And then after every event, before and after every event. So before an event, you want to have anywhere from 60 to 90 grams carbs. And then the same thing post. But it's multiple events. So that's what people need to understand. Whereas like cyclists and runners, they will eat carbs while they're on the bike or while they're running every hour. So if you're doing a 4-hour event, or they're doing the drinks. So the drinks are 1-to-1 glucose, fructose mixes. And they're having about 100 grams of carbs in liquid, depending on the weight of the person.
Yeah, I said 0.3 or 0.7. It's 3.3 to like 5.7 grams per pound of body weight for the backloading. So like you can fall into a range those 3 days leading up to a larger event. But what Todd's talking about, like even just on an hourly intake basis, that could just be your day-to-day training that you'd be wanting to fuel per hour.
Yeah, so it's really interesting.
And we're talking about athletes, obviously, that are in like a 4 to 6 hour training like per day. Like typically in 2 sessions, like a 2-hour and then a 2-hour, or a 3 and a 3 or something.
I would even say people who are training for 2 hours, who are trying to be competitive, 2 to 6 hours, depending on your level, right? Because not everyone's at the same level. It's not a paid sport. It's a professional sport, but only the top tier get paid. So you kind of just have to see where you're at. And that falls on like what you can and cannot do physically, right? So
yeah.
I would say that's the biggest thing is the carbohydrates and the understanding of how those work in your body, the types of carbohydrates that are out there, how they work together, the chains. Like you do want to learn like the chemistry behind it, because when you go to buy something at the store or like a carb replenishment drink, like you should know what's going into your body because it's going into your body. So that's a whole thing in itself. But yeah, as far as like the other stuff, the foods, like the meats and proteins, those are the same thing. I don't know why I said that. And the vegetables. I think what you said is really good, and what people want to look for is you want to source your own meat if you possibly can, or go to a company that will source the meat. And if you don't have that luxury or the opportunity, like just do your best, because like you were saying, there's a lot of stuff in meat that's creating inflammation. It's not even the meat that's creating the inflammation. Like that's where meat kind of gets a bad rap. There's all kinds of other hormones and chemicals and things that have been pumped into these animals, which I don't necessarily agree with. But how you feed 1 billion people, you know?
Sure.
So there's good and bad, but you just got to build your awareness. The best thing to do is, if you're not opposed to eating meat, is buy a cow or 2 and then have it taken down to the butcher and handle business. Because you would have meat for like a year.
Yeah, buy a chest freezer, buy a cow.
Yep.
Done.
Yeah, or whatever animal you want. But it depends. We have family friends that are hunters, and we get our venison from our brother-in-law, your brother-in-law also, your sister's husband. Oh my gosh. I don't know how people say that stuff, but that's the best way to do it, I would say. But carbs, if you're an athlete, look at that, play with that. Depending on the sport, if you're a strength athlete, you probably don't need to do that as much.
For sure.
But if you're like an enduring athlete, you need carbohydrate.
Yeah. One thing that I always tell most people, even if it's just worth trying, like even if you are eating gluten, you're like, whatever, I don't care. Even if you are eating dairy and like, whatever, I don't care. Just try as a challenge, remove one of them for a week. And I know like I was like, holy shit, how do I do without eating bread? Well, how will I do without eating, I don't know, a pizza or a burger? Like, oh, I'm so strange. No. Plenty of people out there who do it. You're freaking cool for doing it because you have a backbone and you stand up for something. So I challenge you to try it for your own health and to explore. Like, hey, I'm going to take on the challenge to eat some damn intestines. I'm gonna take the initiative to eat some liver and seek that out. It's not in the grocery store right now. I'm gonna seek that out because it's been on my list to do. So I challenge anyone listening out there, try cut out gluten for a week. Try cut out dairy for a week. More of us are sensitive to it than we actually know. And if you didn't notice anything, amazing, keep going. But as this CrossFit athlete that I talked to yesterday, he noticed a substantial difference, and he never had just a clue that that there would be a difference between high quality protein and low quality. So, kind of wrapping this up, but what are other, like, we haven't talked about high performance habits that you think can elevate your game? Let's say breathing, ice bath. We talked about journaling. Is there anything like that comes up like, hey, this is what you should have in your regimen if you want to achieve the highest possible performance?
You got to low stress. You got to figure out how to make everything else in your life low stress. It's tough, even if you're not a high performing athlete. Like, I think that should be the goal for a lot of people, because exercise is a stressor. And if you're a high performing athlete, you're doing a lot of it. So you're crushing yourself, you're crushing your endocrine system, just your mind, your emotions, and like you're putting a lot into it. And then if you're not a high performing athlete, like, you probably have a job that you go to and work real hard at. You may or may not have kids, or you have a dog that you got to walk every day and feed, or bills to pay, traffic, driving in traffic is stressful. So you're just crushing yourself with stress on top of stress. And I think that's something that people don't realize. Like everything, like going outside and standing in the sun feels really good. Most people don't do that, and they should. But then if you go outside and you stand in the sun and there's a car alarm going off, it feels less good because there's stressors happening, right? So when you think about that, it's like, okay, what are things in your life that you're doing that are de-stressing you? And what are things outside of your control that are stressing you? And then what are things that are inside of your control that are stressing you? And then how do you like manage all those things, right? So standing in the sun's really good. Do that for like 20 minutes. Close your eyes and just let the warmth of the sun make you feel good. There's a lot of hormonal factors that we won't get into, but just it's free and you should do it. And then hydration is really important, because the more you're hydrated, the better your body can work and function and create homeostasis. We said journaling, and then breathing is very important. A lot of people, and it's as easy as this. Like I think there's a lot of people that sell a lot of breathing and coaching, and it's great. And if you're into that, go ahead and do it. But realistically, it's like learn how to just breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. Learn how to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and control. And then also, once you get good at that, do breath holds. Try to learn how to hold your breath on an inhale for as long as you can. And then also try to learn how to hold your breath on an exhale. So breathe all the air out and hold, and see if you can improve those things. The way you can improve those things is just by practicing. And that's pretty straightforward. You could get real deep into that, but just understanding your breathing and your control of your breath. As far as like heat or cold therapy, those things are great too. Similar to the sun, just a lot of good hormonal effects. The cold therapy stuff I really enjoy only because flight or fight response when you get in the cold water, and you learn how to kind of adapt to that. I personally, like I came from combat sports, so I know what it feels like to get punched in the face by another human being. Very stressful situation. When you get used to that, you become more resilient to that stress. And that's true for a lot of stressors. And if you can put yourself in a controlled situation, like getting in a cold ice bath, you can learn how to deal with that stress or stressful situations a little bit better, right? It's similar to how, like, if you're a Navy SEAL and someone's shooting at you, that's a very stressful situation. There's no way to really practice that because that is dangerous, right? So getting in an ice bath is a small micro dose of that type of stress. Or you get into an altercation because you get a little fender bender and the person who gets out of their car is a little amped up, a little mad at you. Getting in the ice bath helps you learn how to relax in stressful situations that are controlled or uncontrollable, and you go into this controlled situation to learn how to do that. Or you could join a combat sport and get punched in the face a couple times. You learn how to relax in a stressful situation. I think those things are very powerful and a humanistic thing that we need to work on. And I'm happy that there's like these communities out there that are really pushing it and having camps, and like everybody gets in the cold water and everything. And although it's really good and they have all these tactics and stuff, realistically at a baseline level, you're just learning how to relax your mind and your breath and your body in a stressful situation, which can help in everyday life. So as far as performing, it's de-stressing yourself, you know, getting your stress levels in your life to go down. And the problem though that I think people face with that is that you have to take a really active role in that process. Like you have to go and seek out hard situations to learn how to respond to those hard situations as practice. And you can use things like heat, because some people don't like the heat. You'll get them in 180 degree infrared sauna, and they're in there for like 5 minutes, and they're like, I gotta get out of here. Like, no, just relax, like calm down, it'll be okay. And that helps you. Same thing with the cold. Having people do hard CrossFit workouts or something like CrossFit where it gets really hard, your heart rate's really high, your muscles are fatigued, you're dying, you don't like it. Teaching them how to breathe and get through that and keep pushing and finish the workout is super helpful. Stuff like that. So micro doses of stress that you can translate into other things in your life that have highly magnitude stress situations that might be completely out of your control, but you learned how to control yourself in controlled settings like the things I listed. So I think that's going to be the best bang for people's buck, is seek out small stressful things that you can control to learn how to be better at them. So then when, a family member dies, or you get diagnosed with something that's not great, or you have a hard time at your job, or you have a boss you don't like, or you get in a little fender bender and it wasn't your fault, how do you respond? Those things are going to amplify your life better, and transcend beyond the other stuff you're doing to make yourself a better human. So it's pretty interesting when you look at it that way.
For sure. I'll add a few very short things, and we'll wrap it at that. Gratitude in the morning. I'll say control your morning, control your day, control your life, or you'll have an outcome in your life that you feel amazing about, and it doesn't matter about the outcome as long as you know who you are, and you set that early on, set the tone early on in the morning. It could be by doing something hard, a micro stressor like a cold shower, or feeling like what I do, get out in the sun, and I breathe in and I feel, as I express gratitude for myself, for my wife, for my daughter, for people who have passed, people who are in my life, what I want to cultivate, faith, like calling in God in my life, or a higher power, regardless of what you believe in, calling in something and letting, what do you want to create in your life, and how do you want to manifest that in your life? And don't let your past dictate your future, but you're in control and you can create whatever reality that you want. You're always the master of your faith and your future. And if you want to manifest something, go ahead and goddamn do it. So there might be obstacles in your way, and the micro stressors, I think that's amazing. And getting outside, even adding that, like breathing, meditating outside in the sun, just maximizing your time when you have it. And when you are in and you're doing something, be incredibly present. That's probably the hardest thing I have, is I want to do everything all the time, but do one thing at a time. Put down your phone, have a dedicated schedule for your phone. Don't look at it all the time, because I included, look at it all the time, and you see your relationships improve and you'll be happier. Yeah.
Right.
Solid.
That's good.
All right, Merissa, Todd, freaking incredible to have this conversation with you. And I wish you so much love, so much just an amazing luck with everything you have going on, and you're doing damn good things in the world. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'm sure we could talk forever.
Yes, there's plenty.
Yeah.
I am very grateful to be connected and friends with Coach Todd Wise and Merissa. They are solid coaches, and athletes too. They practice what they preach. They have deep knowledge, and I say that firsthand, having been coached by them. So if you want to check out how they go about things, and also their deep understanding and knowledge, check out thepack.fit, and you can find all of the links to their information on social media and the pack in the show notes. I thank you for tuning in today, and I wish you just an amazing day. And if you haven't done so far, please do a good deed of the day. Please leave 5 stars as a review on Apple. If you scroll down, it takes you probably 10 seconds. If you're on another platform, hit subscribe, follow, write a review. It takes you no more than a minute. And why? Because it helps spread this message. And hopefully this has helped you, so this will help someone else too. I thank you for tuning in, and I'm sending you much love. Cheers.